Hey, hello, howdy, how you doing? Rimworld's new DLC came out like 3 months ago, and like always, I'm incredibly late to the party. Having never played the Biotech DLC before, or even watching a single YouTube video on it, or what it all adds aside from reading some tweets a few months back, I figured the best way to figure everything out would be to just jump in. So today, I'm gonna survive 100 days in the extreme desert biome after starting Naked and Afraid. For the initial setup, I went with Cassandra Classic on the Losing is Fun difficulty because I hate my life. I chose a random 100% planet and generated it before choosing a landing zone. For this run, I thought it'd be enjoyable to use my zero skills all passions character for a little added challenge. After suicide bombing the Earth, I hopped out of my escape pod and immediately began planting rice. That's basically the only thing that'll be able to save me, so getting that in ASAP is the key here. Outside of that, I went ahead and claimed some nearby ruins that I'd use as the hub for my base. The big issue I've noticed is that there's no cacti anywhere on the map, meaning I won't be able to make a bow. There are, however, 2 donkeys, so if I can kill one, I'll have food. To end the night, I made an awful knife that would serve as my weapon for tomorrow. After waking up, I made my way over to the donkeys in the bottom of the map and got the jump on one, taking it out while only suffering minor injuries. Looks like I'll survive at least a few days here, unless food poisoning kills me first. The hardest part is going to be balancing the malnutrition while I wait for the rice to grow, but we'll take it one day at a time for now. Most of day 3 was spent trying to keep myself occupied to avoid devouring all the meat in the corner.
Phrasing?
Like I said, we'll need to balance the malnutrition with what food we do have until we harvest the rice. That's our biggest concern and will be for some time, unfortunately. Here's where our morals get called into question. Unfortunately for Margarita, it's either me or her. This may have pissed off her tribe, but it's going to keep me alive for another day. I'm sure there's no way this will come back to completely bite us in the ass later, right? The following morning, I did the honorable thing and buried her. I know what a lot of you are thinking, but I'm not ready to impersonate Jeffrey Dahmer just yet. I spent the rest of the day sowing more rice before resting to heal from my injuries. I made plans to craft a stonecutter's table, which should help me close in these ruins and start working on defenses as well. That'll be our little side project while we wait for the rice to come in. Day 5 was kind of my biggest nightmare. Everything that could have gone wrong, went wrong. First, I spent the majority of the day disassembling a bunch of steel to make a stonecutter's table, which I botched the construction on. Immediately after being emasculated, my rice got blight, effectively ruining any food that I was about to harvest and leaving me wondering how much of the Geneva Convention I'd have to violate in order to survive. I spent the rest of the day trying to salvage what was left of my little farm. Day 6 brought my first raid. No, not that one. Come on, don't be silly. No, remember that random visitor I massacred like 3 days ago? Well, apparently their tribe was pissed off enough to send a sole colonist to come wreck my day. They do have a better knife, but I have better clothing and skills. No matter what, I'm sure this will be a close one. All in all, the first raid went something like this. Taking advantage of the situation, I tried to tend to my enemy to level my first aid a little more, but he wouldn't stop resisting, so I had to do my best NYPD impression and beat the homeless man into submission. After waking up the next morning, I set out to hunt the sole wildlife in the area, the final donkey. Luckily, I had the bow from day 3, so it should be much safer, albeit way more time consuming, than just running in with the knives out. This took practically the entire day because my aim is worse than a stormtrooper's right now, but we'll get the hang of it eventually. On day 8, I turned my focus back to the stonecutter's table. I'll need to really focus on building now since the first raid is done. With my luck, they'll be back in a few days, tops, and I'll need to be better prepared than just hoping luck is on my side again. I spent the rest of the day disassembling more steel until I was finally able to complete a working stonecutter's table. I'm really trying not to worry about our food situation at the moment. We still have some meat from the donkey to tide us over for another day or two, and after that we'll just have to hope our crops are ready for harvest. In the meantime, I'm focusing on making stone blocks out of any material I can find. I'm not so focused on the type of block at this point, but rather the amount that I can accumulate. The entirety of day 9 was spent cutting stone blocks so that I could wall in my little base. From there, I built a roof so my food wouldn't expire as fast. Now all I have to worry about is the extreme heat, which shouldn't be too much of a problem once I can get a research table built up and ready to go. On day 10, I began building a research bench and attempted to harvest my first crops. It went about as well as you'd expect, and I walked away with more harvest botched than rice in my inventory. A rocky start, but I'm not panicking yet. We're doing much better than I thought we'd be at this point, to be honest. The afternoon harvest attempt went much better and brought my total up to a whopping 30 rice. That should tide me over for a day. We'll need to expand our farm at this point though, at least until I can gain a few more levels in plants. I finished my research bench that evening and queued up solar panels, which would be my primary power source for this entire run. Progress was incredibly slow with solar research. I was moving the bar at like 2 units per hour in game, which just wasn't worth it, so I turned my focus to crafting more stone blocks so that I could build some traps for the next raid. I began working on my traps the next morning, but progress was cut short when I was hit with my second raid. I got lucky again with only one pawn, but they were better equipped than me. I rushed to finish one of the traps before he got to me, and equipped a knife for my final stand. Well, I accidentally sped up and my trap just one-shot and sent him to the Shadow Realm, so yeah. At least I got some smoke leaf out of it though. The following morning, I buried my attacker and got back to researching. I really need some sort of power to refrigerate my rice, otherwise it was going to be an endless cycle of hoping and praying and I'd be able to harvest just enough crops to get me through another day. Towards the end of the day, some loser came wandering over with items to trade. Now, looking at his inventory, he had a ton of gear. And I needed supplies. I think we can all see the foreshadowing here. So this was an important part. I didn't want to kill the loser. I just wanted his gear. But also, there's a chance that I can recruit him to join the ranks, which would literally double my production, making life a hell of a lot easier. In short, this was a massive opportunity. At least until the geriatric tried to escape and I cracked him so hard with the carbine that his skull exploded.
And it's gone.
We walked away from this encounter with some food, weapons, and armor, which is a great net positive, even if it means potentially going to war with another faction. Day 14 brought yet another solo colonist raid. Luckily, I had looted a normal quality carbine and landed one of my initial shots, meaning I could successfully bait the raider around the entire map, slowly pushing him to the edge of my range, firing a volley, and repeating until eventually, he was losing too much blood to fight back, in which case I took aim and fired 3 more bullets, taking him down, surely only further agitating his former colony. I spent the rest of the day burying another fallen enemy and harvesting more rice. While I slept, I received a quest to help a poor child, hoping to buy his sister back from pirates. Hoping to redeem myself in the eyes of Rimworld's gods, I gave the kid the silver he was asking for and sent him on his way. Finally, at plants level 4, I'm able to harvest my rice most of the time, leading to much bigger hauls and food intake. Once we have power online, I'll be able to make an oven and start cooking. I think it's worth noting that it's incredibly important to not get complacent when it comes to food. I may have over 300 rice now, but I'll burn through it quickly, so I need to be constantly replanting after every harvest until I'm able to make actual meals out of this. Food will remain the goal until we have a means to freeze it, but security is an almost equally important task. I was able to build one more trap and begin sowing more rice. But again, these tend to take the majority of the day right now because it's just me. I'm really hoping I can luck into at least one other pawn here soon though. It'd help a ton and God knows how much we're gonna need it. With another trap made, all my crops harvested, and new seeds planted, it's time to turn to research while I wait for some time to pass. The process of essentially becoming a hermit is slow but effective. I don't really have a need to leave my base at the moment, so I'm just gonna keep grinding away. Once I get solar panels, I'll need batteries to store the power, all of which require components that I'll need to harvest from space debris. As long as the raids can hold off for a few days, I'll be golden. Now, over the next several days, my life consisted of researching, only pausing to harvest and replant crops. At one point, things got exciting again when a lightning storm came out of nowhere, but I was safe inside my base. At this point, even if all my crops burned down, I had enough food to survive another growing season. It was around this time that Rimworld gods decided to bless me back by lighting a section of my crops on fire. Luckily, I was able to get over to it in time and stop the fire from spreading too far. On day 21, I received a quest titled The Lost Traveler, which gave me the option to let someone crash at my place for almost 2 weeks in hopes that they'd like it here so much that they'd choose to join me. It was also around this time that I was given the chance to name the settlement and faction. So Joshua, the pawn I got from the quest, actually has a passion for research, which is great for me. I set him up for that and shifted all other responsibilities onto myself. I was able to give Joshua a bed and made plans to start building out the base to be more than just one rectangular room. Day 22 saw us finishing our research on solar panels and start towards batteries. This was huge for me since it meant we could finally make AC units and use those to freeze our food. I spent my time cutting stone blocks to use on our base. I'd laid out floor plans to build 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and a freezer, and a rec room, all of which would require time that I was desperately trying to take advantage of. Day 23 brought a new threat, a rampant cougar migration, and I'm not talking about the kinds you find at NASCAR events. The scary aspect of this is, sure, they won't turn hostile now, but there's literally no food here for them besides me and Joshua. And once they realize that, we're screwed if they get in. It was around this time that another raid happened, and I was confident I could take the enemy out by myself, so I left Joshua to his work and wandered out into the desert. Another easy takedown. The best thing about this is that the cougars will be occupied with the body for a few days, giving us some more time to figure out what to do with them. The last thing worth noting on this eventful day was that we finished research on batteries and began researching hydroponics. I know it's probably smarter to go into smithing right now, but we have a ton of weapons at our disposal, so I'm willing to roll the dice on them keeping us alive for a few more days. The next day was much less eventful. The majority of my time was focused on building out the base a little more. I also laid out blueprints for 2 solar panels and 3 batteries that we could rely on for power of the base once it was fully built. The next roadblock here is steel and components. They shouldn't be hard to get, but we'll need to set aside at least a few days to focus on mining in order to get the resources we need to get the base up and running. Another day, another single colonist raid. If this is all Rimworld's gonna throw at me, we'll hit 100 days no problem. The only scare with this one was I got way too close to the target before shooting, and they ended up getting a couple good hits in on me. Luckily, I have solid armor and was able to take them out before Joshua could even get his fat ass over here. I almost messed up big time here. See, when I started building out, I disassembled the walls to put doors in, and for some reason, my pawn thought it was a great idea to do that at the start of construction instead of the end, leaving our base exposed in 4 areas. Because of this, all of the materials inside are technically unroofed and will begin to deteriorate. To try and mitigate the damage of the problem, I spent all of days 26 and 27 narrowly avoiding major breakdowns while building out the doors to lock in our base again. I was able to complete the doors that night, but unfortunately, Joshua went on a food bender like something out of a Nikocado avocado video. On day 28, I finally killed the wandering fat ass known as Zippy, which somehow gave me fibrous mechanites? No idea what that is, but it sounds painful. Normally I'd have my colonists spend as much time in bed as possible, but
Ain't nobody got time for that.
at this point we've got about 4 days left before Joshua makes a decision, so I'm trying to take full advantage of my time with him, while also planning as if he was leaving us. Unfortunately for me, Joshua didn't need to take all 4 days to make up his mind, leading to a very awkward situation. After I downed him, I made him watch as I dug his grave, equipped an axe, and played patty cake with his torso until he found Jesus. A sad way to go out for someone I was hoping to keep around, but we'll manage. On the morning of day 30, I received another quest. This time it was to rescue a wounded colonist named Maghar. After checking the map, they weren't too far away, but they were in the mountains, which would make travel time-consuming. At this point though, having another colonist is a necessity, so I gathered up a little over 8 days worth of rice and set off on my journey to rescue Maghar. Days 31 and 32 were spent traveling. I know, super exciting gameplay here. But just wait, I promise it gets good eventually. On day 33, I made it to Maghar's destination. At around the same time, my base was also raided. Since I was days away, there wasn't all that much I could do about it, and would have to rebuild whenever I got home. The recovery mission was actually super easy. I was able to get in, tend to Maghar, offer help, and reform the caravan before any enemies showed up. Now for the 2-day journey home. In the meantime, the raider was beginning to make a dent in my base. Day 34 saw my base turn to rubble and ash, as the fire started during the raid took out most of my gear, and a considerable amount of my walls. We'd be left with no food and no protection, having to effectively start from scratch. Oh, and as if that wasn't bad enough, I got food poisoning on the hike back to base, prolonging our time in the wild. We arrived back at base on day 36 and began the process of rebuilding. I noticed that both of my colonists had some toxic buildup, which I've never seen before, so I'm hoping that it just kind of goes away on its own. And while editing this, I noticed it was just because we rested in a toxic zone while on our way back from rescuing Maghar, which I think would be a really interesting place to visit at some point if that's a new addition for biotech. Outside of that, I put focus back on research, and assigned my pawn to begin rebuilding whenever he wasn't harvesting rice. Maghar is incapable of doing dumb labor, so she's really only good for researching and trading at this point, which is fine, it just means more responsibility gets placed on the man with the purple hat. That night, I received a quest for Prince's Breakout. She was around the same distance as Maghar, but we didn't have the resources to risk it at the moment, so I decided to finish up the base first and allow both colonists to heal up a little bit before heading back out. On day 38, I finished the walling in the initial ruins and re-sowed more rice. Nothing really worth noting happened outside of that. Early the following morning, I started my day by making a weapon for Maghar now that all of our gear is turned to ash. The knife itself is in awful condition, but it's better than nothing, and at this point, she's really more of a last resort meat shield that I plan on just using as an extra body to throw at my enemies. After that, I harvested another set of rice and sowed some more. This should be enough to get us to Prince, so I plan to head out the next morning with a caravan to rescue her. I'd take both pawns again for the sake of strength in numbers, knowing that the base would be left exposed again. It's not a huge deal to me at this point though, I've rebuilt it once already, so I can certainly do it again if needed. I set off on the morning of day 40 and reached Prince's location late on day 41, where we found Mathis, an artistic psychopath who somehow managed to build this beautiful little encampment with all these little decorations of bodies, housing Prince. To be honest, I'm not sure if Prince's fat ass was in prison or heaven with how much food was in her cell turned hotel. Anyway, after taking care of Mathis while Maghar tried to walk in a straight line, we looted the area and headed back home, arriving on day 43. The following morning, I set Prince to work on construction, while I focused on gathering more components to finally get some solar panels up. Oh, we also wrapped up hydroponics and began working on researching survival meals. Day 45 saw us completing our 2 solar panels and 3 batteries, while also almost finishing the frame of the base. It's nice to see some progress finally being made here. I made blueprint plans for a freezer in the bottom right next to the kitchen. At the top, I split the open area into a lounge rec room and bedroom for my pawn. To top it all off, I added plans to make a slate tile for the flooring because we're bougie. The next morning, we were raided again by a solo pawn. Again. After gunning them down, I stripped them of their belongings, and when they inevitably tried to make a run for it,
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Outside of that, it was business as usual. More farming, building, and researching. Maghar is level 5 cooking, so she'll be our cook for the foreseeable future. Kinda shocked Prince wasn't higher considering her, circumstance, but whatever. Moving on. On day 47, I noticed we were out of steel, which was preventing us from making simple meals. So I set my pawn off to start mining some like a true non-union blue-collar boy. Day 48 was a big day for us. We finally had power. A massive win for us looking back on what we started with, and opens up a ton of potential for us down the road here. Eventually, once we're all set up and sustainable, we'll look to start setting up some trade caravans and see what we can do. For now, it's business as usual. The next day, I assigned Maghar to mine for components while I focus on sowing more rice. Reason being, we need components for AC units, which are kind of a necessity in the desert. On day 50, we finally built out the AC units, setting up our freezer, meaning we can now start effectively storing food. Because of this, I extended the farmland exponentially while we build out another room for hydroponics. Over the next few days, I focused on finishing up the main portions of the base. A pod crashed on day 52 carrying an enemy pawn, so I gave him the old Florida welcome and stole his clothes before leaving him for dead in the baking sun. On the morning of day 57, we were blessed with yet another one-person raid. Not really sure what's happening and why we're only getting one-person raids, but I'll take it, I guess. Anyway, this set the scene for some of the most riveting action you've ever seen. I know, super exciting stuff. While I was watching this unfold, I couldn't help think of what this reminded me of, and then it hit me. Day 58 was back to working on the flooring. Nothing too exciting today aside from the fact that I added the section for more storage. For the next several days, it was quiet, giving me time to make some real progress on our base, which was beginning to look more like a nether fortress than a base at this point. On day 65, we received another rescue quest, which gave us the option to save Tails, a wounded pawn in the mountains. Doing what I did best, I grabbed some food, geared up my pawns, and full sent my entire colony to go rescue Tails. This was another super easy quest, considering we didn't even trigger a combat sequence. We kinda just walked in, offered our help, reformed the caravan, and were out within seconds, making it back to base with Tails on day 66, where we began making living arrangements to accommodate our new colonist. Now, over the next few days, we got kinda screwed. First, on the morning of day 68, we were hit with a solar flare, effectively disabling all power in the base. And just a few hours later, Prince went on a food binge, tearing through a massive amount of our reserves. Luckily, we had another rice harvest ready to go, and we were able to recover relatively quickly though. On day 70, I began mining again to focus on my largest project to date. We were fairly established now, albeit in a terribly designed base. But at least we didn't have to worry about food or anything like that, which gave us more time to focus on other things, like growing
Haggerty weed.
On day 74, while building out my hydroponics room, I accidentally overdid it on the power grid, leaving us in a deficit. To counter this predicament, I began working on building another solar panel. During all of this, we finally got our first raid with more than one enemy, so that was super exciting. It only took 74 days. Meghar was almost killed in the fight, but we managed to take care of the enemies while my pawn dealt with a bad case of food poisoning out in the distance. Day 78 saw us building 3 more solar panels to handle the power required to grow our Tegrity. From there, I took notes from Randy Marsh and began growing our own Tegrity-based smoke leaf strand. Of course, just as we started, an eclipse hit us, purging the light from our base once again. To give myself something to do while we waited, I built out a storage room to help clean up the hydroponics area and began research on drug production. Day 81 saw us building an electric tailoring bench and begin crafting actual clothing for once instead of stealing everything off of corpses. As the sun set, a random pawn named Audrey came crashing down to us, but unfortunately, she died while I was tending to her. Looking back, I definitely could have saved her if I would have just been paying attention though. A lot of the mistakes I've been making throughout the playthrough, such as this, are really just due to the fact that I haven't played Rimworld in months and I'm rusty, and it's kind of embarrassing, honestly, to make a video on, but we've already come this far, so we might as well finish it up. The following day, I got a quest for an Imperial transport crash, which involved us defending a ship while we waited for backup to arrive. Naturally, I accepted and prepared for battle. While this battle was short, it was absolutely insane. It made me so excited to see what kind of chaos was waiting for me in the Biotech DLC. I mean, come on, there was a fire-breathing pawn. How awesome is that? On day 85, we finally started infusing our Integrity into these neat little stick things that light on fire at one end and even kids can walk around with. As production ramped up, we built more labs to make more Integrity sticks. Our plan was finally coming together and thoughts of world domination started swirling from within the colony. On day 88, I was raided by furries. Not a sentence I ever thought I'd say out loud, but here we are. This fight was actually intense and was closer than I would have liked it to be, ending with 3 of my 4 pawns downed, even though I was the only one in critical condition. A good fight nonetheless. Apparently, Maghar suffered from pretty intense furry PTSD and went on a smoke leaf bender until she inevitably got way too high and passed out in the storage room. The next day was a day of recovery. Nothing crazy happened, we just kinda sat around healing up and hanging out. On day 90, while I was preparing a caravan to go mend relations with a nearby colony, a manhunter pack of huskies roamed in, causing me to put on my Michael Vick jersey and march out to meet them head on. To end the day, I came down with an infection. With no medicine, I took the hit B approach and waited for my bed to heal me. Day 91 was pretty intense, but not for the reasons you're thinking of. I basically just sat around all day and watched my immunity race against the infection to see if I was going to actually make it, or if I was going to go out due to an illness because I have the immune system of a toddler. We also offered the nearby colony all of our tradable items and our integrity in exchange for them to hate us a little less. During the night, while trying to tend myself, I gave myself a 0% tend quality, and effectively sealed my fate. This was incredibly depressing to watch myself die in such an anticlimactic manner. There was no epic battle, no starvation, no volcanic eruption. Hell, I just told you I survived a triple rocket shot to the arm like it was nothing. But yet a simple infection was going to be what takes me out.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
It sucks, but it's also entirely my fault for not prioritizing medicine at all throughout this playthrough. After arriving back at base, the rest of the colony set to work giving our main character the proper burial he deserved. Maghar appeared to take lead at this point, but I'm not sure how anyone will be able to replace the hero in the purple hat. Day 94 was a return to normalcy, or as close to it as the colony could manage. Tail took over the farming, Maghar continued research, and Prince handled all the extra tasks that needed to be dealt with. On day 95, some cargo pods landed nearby, carrying smoke leaf joints that we utilized to keep everyone from killing each other. But other than that, it was business as usual. Nothing much else happened aside from replanting the rice field. The only thing worth noting today was that I changed my bedroom into an official tomb, choosing dark torches to place at the perimeter of the tomb, as well as changing the lights inside to match the color of the purple hat once worn by our hero, which was now placed dramatically on a shelf in the corner. It was around this time that we started to fall apart as a tight-knit colony. Prince became depressed and hid in her room, halting any work around the base. Maghar refused to talk to anyone and became obsessed with researching a way to bring back pawns from the dead by reading Pet Cemetery over and over again. On day 98, we received a request from the Broken Empire requesting a colonist to help defend from raiders. Looking for an excuse to get out of this depressing landscape, Tails volunteered and was sent on her way. This would be the last time anyone ever saw Tails. Legend has it, she wound up joining the furry raiders from a few weeks back and ended up enslaving thousands who refused to go to Rainforest 2023. Day 99 was incredibly boring. Nothing really happened at all. to be honest, we kinda just took a knee and ran out the clock on this one. Today officially marked 100 days since our escape pods suplexed the sand around us. Our hero would never see this day, but the people we rescued would. An honestly rather boring ride, but definitely a fun challenge to endure. I've never made a base in the extreme desert before, and even though this one kinda sucks, I'm happy that I was able to at least make something out of nothing. Normally I'd focus on the hero here, but since he's dead, I figured we could honor him by reading the interpretation of the artwork around his tomb. Just kidding, that's stupid. Art depictions for nerds anyway. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you for watching. This was a ton of fun to make, and my first time really exploring other games on YouTube outside of Project Zomboid, so let me know what you think. Thanks to my YouTube members who always encourage me to try new things, no matter how messy they end up becoming. I appreciate you all, and as always, thanks for stopping by.